Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you. Tonight was a big night for UFC. Not only did they have two big championship fights on their card tonight, but basically a big announcement, honestly, that's been rumored since early, I guess you can say February, when CM Punk first walked out of WWE. Basically, is thought that CM Punk might leave WWE and find a job as some sort of an announcer in UFC, and I thought that would have been a good fit for him to go over there. He's been a big UFC fan, big MMA supporter throughout his whole career, showing up and being a big sort of spotlight celebrity. A lot of times you'll see them put the camera on him during the shows. Not only that, he would tweet and follow the shows almost religiously, talking about every fight that was on the card, no matter if it was a bottom of the barrel kind of fight, or if it was just some sort of a set of fights on a night, sort of like a fight night on Fox Sports 1. He was always sort of watching these. But at UFC 181, December 6, 2014, the monumental night for UFC, CM Punk and Joe Rogan announced that he had signed a multi-fight deal to fight for the United Fighting Championship. As of right now, it looks like he's going to fight in the middleweight or the welterweight division. I think that honestly, this is a big deal for UFC, signing a guy like CM Punk. He's going to bring over a lot of wrestling fans. If you can remember the time when Brock Lesnar was fighting there, he seemed to always be bringing in, big names. A big number of people to watch his fights. That's when I first started getting into UFC. The first UFC fight that I watched, excluding the UFC fights that were back in these smoke-filled arenas with basically guys that were in huge beer bellies going out there and swinging at each other. UFC 1 through 10 or whatever that was. I remember my dad really loved them when I was living with him back in the day. And then I just had grown very, very distant of it. I really like professional wrestling. I would fight with my dad when he tried to watch the UFC fights. I didn't really understand it. I needed some sort of a storyline for why these guys were fighting. I would love professional wrestling. Some guy, steals this guy's leather jacket. They have a reason to fight. And they need to get down. But basically, when Brock Lesnar had his fight against Frank Mir, I was able to go and I was able to find the fight on the internet, and I was able to check it out and saw that Brock Lesnar did have some talent and he did deserve to be in the ring. He didn't win that fight, basically because he didn't have any sort of submission training. As once he beat the shit out of Frank Mir, and the second Frank Mir I think grabbed his arm and put him in some sort of an arm lock. Brock was tapping out, saying no more of this, and then he learned to fight another day. He would, have another rematch against Frank Mir later in his career, winning that fight, so sort of getting that one back, becoming the champion, becoming the guy that's on the video game. I think that could be the same thing for CM Punk, but I think they better use the popularity on him really fast. I know that there are videos of CM Punk rolling around, training with the Gracies. He's not going into this dry. He's been a judo guy for a long time. I think everybody remembers the stories of CM Punk and Eve sort of training jiu-jitsu on the road together as they were traveling around with WWE, and basically he said that that made him more flexible to become a better wrestler. And I've heard from Brian Alvarez watching the videos of CM Punk rolling around with the Gracies that he seems like he moves better around doing jiu-jitsu than he did moving around the ring as a wrestler. So I don't know. I wish this guy the best of luck going into UFC, leaving WWE. You always want to wish somebody the best going out in another direction. I have my doubts. I mean, I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one saying that he's, might be biting off a little bit more than he can chew. But then again, Batista was a guy like that. He had one sort of, bucket wish dream to have an MMA fight. He went out there. He had the fight. He won the fight. It didn't look good. It wasn't pretty. But, maybe that's what CM Punk wants to do. Maybe he just wants to go in there, see how good he is. Maybe he wins. Maybe he gets his ass kicked. But I think that, once he starts fighting, he says he wants to start fighting around 2015. We're going to have to see what kind of an opponent UFC gives him. I'm thinking that more than likely his first opponent might be sort of a gimme, and then see where it goes from there. But this is a big leap for CM Punk. He's not just going to be going out there and drawing Thor. Or I guess he wasn't drawing. He wasn't the artist. He was sort of the writer. So I guess he wasn't writing the storyline for Thor and, making videos from Nerdist and things like that. But this is a big deal. This might even be the announcement that Dana White was going to make earlier this week when he held the big press conference. And then once the question finally came about what's the big announcement, Dana White said, of course you were going to ask me that. We have no announcement because we weren't able to get the deal done. This was the rumored deal that was supposed to be going down, but I don't think anybody was really looking for him to become an actual fighter for UFC. Like I said earlier, I thought that he was going to be some sort of an announcer. With UFC, branching out and going into different directions, with fights all over there, with Fight Pass, and they're going into Japan, going into China. Of course, they're growing in Brazil, one of their biggest markets, and here they are in the United States, as well as going to Mexico, and I think they fight in Canada. There's all these fights, and basically Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg can't be at all of these fights. So you think they would need more announcers, so that's why I thought they would be branching out and trying to bring him in as one of their guys that can build up to becoming one of the A-list guys. But he's gonna fight. Supporting news, or I guess you can say big news. So we'll go from there, and we'll have to see when UFC plans for this guy to have his first fight. But this is probably the biggest news that's going to come out of the UFC, even with their 2 championship matches tonight.